Troubling statistics show American Indians and Alaska Natives experience sexual abuse and violence at a much higher rate than other groups. But in Indian country, advocates say it's often hard to even talk about domestic abuse and sexual assault. One group based right here in Albuquerque is trying to address the stigma and offer opportunities to help young people learn about healthy relationships. The Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women uses culture and social media and involves young people in decision making. The goal is to support communities while working with tribal leaders, local, state, and federal officials to not only advocate for families, but change the conversation about violence.
And I'm here today with some people who've worked on many of these issues locally and nationally. Delana Otherbull is the Executive Director for the Coalition to Stop Violence, and Keosha Peter is their Youth Coordinator. And Kevin Washburn is a professor at the University of New Mexico School of Law, and you're also the former Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs during the Obama administration.
Yes,
so thank you all for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
And so, Delana, what do you see as one of the biggest challenges when it comes to addressing violence against Native women and sexual assault in Indian country?
I think some of the biggest challenges that we face are really that we don't have good numbers. We know that with the recent National Institute of Justice report that 83% of Native women experience violence in their lifetime, but here in our state, we really don't have adequate data systems to actually have the real numbers of what's happening.
And what about when addressing in tribal communities? Do you often see that's troubling for people to talk about these issues?
Well, I think in our tribal communities more specifically, silence is loud. And so having these conversations and engaging our communities to have these type of conversations within their families is really hard.
And back to the numbers real quick, why aren't there better reporting of statistics?
Well, we know that less than 2% of actual sexual assaults are ever prosecuted. So we also know that a lot of Native women or victims of sexual violence do not want to push forward with prosecutions. So oftentimes they're not reported. And one of the things that I think our tribal communities face is when they do report, there often are no services or support in place for them to have that kind of support through the process.
And Kevin, I think some people who don't really know about these issues and why it's so challenging in Indian country, during your work with the administration, what did you see as some changes to help?
Well, trying to address the data issue. The data issue is a real problem. Partly it's a trust issue because people don't trust the authorities. It's not their tribal community, it's not their tribe that's going to be handling the criminal justice or the prosecution or the public safety. Oftentimes it's outsiders, and they don't trust the ability of the outsiders to come in and actually do what they say they're going to do. It's also the fact that the uniform crime reports that every law enforcement agency files in the United States, there's no box that says did this happen in Indian country? Did it happen on Indian lands? And we made a lot of efforts during the Obama administration to start addressing those issues and making sure that we're gathering better data. But it takes years to develop good data, and then it takes years to develop the solutions once you have the good data to figure out what those solutions are. So it's a long-term type problem with long-term solutions.
And there's also issues with prosecution by non-Native offenders. What are some of the policies that have been worked on in recent years?
Well, we've had two major laws passed in recent years. The Tribal Law and Order Act, which expanded tribal jurisdiction to felonies. Prior to that, they only had misdemeanor jurisdiction. And the Violence Against Women Reauthorization allowed tribes to prosecute non-Indians in very narrow circumstances related to domestic violence or dating violence. And not very many tribes have actually been able to take advantage of those programs, but it's theoretically possible now, and a few tribes are starting to engage with those different programs. It turns out it's very expensive. We put a lot of rules on tribes if they want to use these tools. And incarceration turns out to be very expensive, and the criminal justice process in the United States is very fair, but very expensive.
And Keosha, some of your work at the Coalition is to bring healthy relationships and talk about healthy relationships, and in particular your job with working with young people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, so I came onto the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women over a year ago now, and I've been spearheading a lot of the youth initiatives that have been out on the grounds and whatnot in our service areas. So some of the things that we do are presentations on healthy relationships, or on dating violence, and we also do a presentation on murdered or missing Indigenous women, so to bring more awareness to the issue within the U.S. and in Canada. Another presentation that we have includes our Land, Body, and Resiliency presentation, and that's really looking at community-based learning and community-based conversations versus having someone come in with a PowerPoint. This presentation takes our conversations to a new level, I think, maybe because it's a critical dialogue versus a presentation. And so all of our young people, usually less than 30 people, come together and we'll have a conversation on what do our relations look like, what relationships do we have established within our lives, because you can't really look at relationships that are negative or that have violence within them without looking specifically toward relationships that have already been established for these young people. So what are these relationships that they have? Their relationships are with their families, with their lands, with their culture, with their turquoise. A lot of young people tell me these things, what they have relationships with. And that's the information that we use to be able to do better outreach for our young people and really get their own voice to see how can we make our presentations better, how can we approach this from a positive perspective versus a negative trauma-based perspective.
And Delana, why is it important to start with young people? Your coalition has an annual youth summit that it's been doing for a few years now. So why engage with the young people?
I think what we're really focusing on, and Kyosha has done an amazing job, is we're really trying to break the cycle of violence because, my generation and some of, my parents' generations and grandparents' generations, they've kind of learned or even normalized violence within the family. And so what Kyosha is doing is she's holding these, I hate to call them workshops, but they're really these spaces, hashtag let's talk about it, where she brings in street tacos and conversation and she makes it really fun, and they're talking about what is healthy relationships, what is healthy communication, how do we honor and hold space with our relatives, and even when we get into intimate relationships with others, how do we engage in setting boundaries. And I don't think that that's something that even my generation learned. And so it's something that we're having conversations and critical dialogue around now. And she's doing it in a really fun, kind of engaging way. She's taking it to social media. And it's breaking barriers that I think that this movement has really struggled to break.
And Kevin, with the work with the coalition, with the advocates, and then you have tribes, local, state, and federal, why is that important to address this issue?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not people at the top in Washington that really change things. It's people on the ground that are working in the communities. That's where the change really needs to happen, and you can't change it from Washington, D.C. I spent several years trying, and it's just impossible. But if people committed on the ground are working to change things, they can make a difference. It's just so interesting that so many Native people haven't seen a healthy relationship. It needs to be shown to them. They need to be taught how to behave in a relationship, and or they've been exposed to a lot of unhealthy relationships, and that's the norm. And so talking about those things in a very intentional way is really the way to address it.
And do you see any kind of policy changes that need to happen? I'm sure there are a lot of them.
There are a lot, but focusing on youth is so important. That was really the First Lady in the Obama administration, Michelle Obama, really wanted to start focusing on youth. And so the Obama administration held its first White House Native Youth Summit in 2014, I believe. And we really started engaging with Native youth because we realized that's the root, that's the root. That's where we can really make a difference. These are long-term problems. You need to think about them generationally. And so if you can get people when they're young, before they've developed bad habits and really reach them, that's the time.
And in New Mexico in particular, what do you see needs to be done to address violence?
Well, a lot more education. The tribes here have been somewhat reluctant to take up that criminal justice authority, which is appropriate. It's not right for every tribe. And criminal justice solutions aren't the solution to every social problem, obviously. Incarcerating people is not the solution to everything. But they really need to be talking about it, and some of our communities in New Mexico are not good about talking about difficult issues. Pueblo people can be reticent about these things, especially, and so it's a lot of us are conflict avoidant. We don't like to face conflict, and this is hard stuff to talk about. So those are some of the issues, and these are great solutions to those issues.
And your thoughts on what needs to be done here in New Mexico?
I think empowering and supporting our young people, because they bring a lot of knowledge to the table, and giving them spaces where they can have these conversations within their own communities. And so we hold the annual Native Youth Summit with the intention that all of the youth who have come to our youth summit are returning back to their communities and taking leadership initiatives. They're starting youth councils. They're doing things within their communities, and that's where the change is going to happen.
And what about you? What would you like to see changed in New Mexico?
In New Mexico, I would really like to see a lot of support for young people and young organizations as well. Let's see. Right now, I know that one of the initiatives that a lot of the tribal youth councils are trying to get started, and they're trying to get the All Indian Governors Council involved, as well as this project called Tying the Knot, where they're going back to Popey's tying of yucca, and back in the Pueblo Revolt, and going back to like retie those knots and bring solidarity within the tribal youth councils to get their voice out. And so that's happening right now with Pueblo communities and a lot of the tribal youth councils, such as like Santa Clara Youth Council, the Navajo Council out of Torreon, New Mexico. They're doing a lot of anti-colonial work as well, especially to bring light to the environmental degradation of resource extraction in their areas, especially concerning like the Los Alamos labs and nuclear waste, Chaco Canyon, and the academic fracking that is happening, and violence against our Native people. In Gallup, we see a lot of young people over at the Canfo shop who are looking to support our LGBTQ relatives, especially on Navajo Nation, and speaking out against border town violence that's happening here in New Mexico, especially with larger towns that border Native nations, including Farmington, Gallup, and Albuquerque. And so they're all really doing the work already, but just recognizing the work and acknowledging for what it is. A lot of the young people are the movement right now. They're doing their best to make their voices heard, to make their presence known. And we saw that last week over at the protest of the Entrada in Santa Fe, where one young person, her name is Jennifer Marley, was held without bond, even though like video evidence shows that she did not like commit like a battery on a police officer. They pulled her in, and so like seeing and recognizing that colonialism, that violence against our women, that violence against our LGBTQ relatives, and that violence in border towns is present and is connected to violence against women, because what happens to our land happens to our people. It is also the same violence that's happening to our young people as well.
All right, well, there's still a lot of work to be done on this issue in Indian country, and especially here in New Mexico as well. And I want to thank you for coming in, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.